Hi, welcome back. We're going to read part 2 of The Old House. If you would like to listen to part 1, you can find it on my Storytime playlist. So this will be part 2 of the story entitled The Old House by Hans Christian Andersen, read to you by myself, Tennille Milam. When we left this story, the pewter soldier was complaining, but the little boy didn't think too much about it. The little boy returned home happy and pleased, and weeks and days passed away, and nods were made to the old house and from the old house, and then the little boy went over again. The carved trumpeters blew, tra-tra-tra-tra, there is the little boy, tra-tra-tra-tra, and the swords and the armor on the knights' portraits rattled, and the silk gowns rustled, and the hog's leather spoke, and the old chairs had the gout in their legs and the rheumatism in their backs. Oh, it was exactly like the first time, for over there, one day an hour was just like another. I cannot bear it, cried the pewter soldier. I have shed pewter tears. It is too melancholy. Rather let me go to the wars and lose arms and legs. It would at least be a change. I cannot bear it any longer. Now I know what it is to have a visit from one's old thoughts and what they may bring with them. I have had a visit from mine, and you may be sure it is no pleasant thing in the end. I was at last about to jump from the drawers. I saw you all over there at home so distinctly, as if you were really here. And again, it was that Sunday morning, and all you children, you stood before the table and you sung your psalms, as you do every morning, and you stood devoutly with folded hands, and father and mother were just as pious. And then the door was opened, and little sister Mary, who is not yet 2 years old, and who always dances when she hears music or singing of whatever kind it may be, she was put into the room, though she ought not have been there. And then she began to dance, but she could not keep time because the tones were so long. And then first she stood on one leg, and she bent her head forwards, and then she stood on the other leg, and she bent her head forwards. But all would not do. You stood very seriously all together, although it was difficult enough with her dancing. But I laughed to myself, and then I fell off the table, and I got a bump, which I have still, for it was not right of me to laugh. But the whole now passes before me again in thought, and everything that I have lived to see, and these are all the old thoughts, and with them what they may bring. Tell me, if you still sing on Sundays, tell me something about little Mary, and how my comrade, the other pewter soldier, lives. Yes, he's happy enough, that's for sure. I cannot bear this any longer. The little boy said, but you are given away as a present. You must remain. Can you not understand this? And the old man came now with a drawer, in which there was much to be seen, both tin boxes and balsam boxes, old cards so large and gilded, such as one never sees now, and several drawers were opened, and the piano was opened, and it had landscapes on the inside of the lid. And it was so hoarse when the old man played it. And then he hummed a song. And he said, yes, she could sing that, he said, and he nodded to the portrait, which had been bought at the broker's. And the old man's eyes shone so bright. I will go to the wars! I will go to the wars! Shouted the pewter soldier as loud as he could, and he flung himself off the drawers right down onto the floor. What became of him? The old man saw it, and the little boy saw it. He was away and he stayed away. "I shall find him," said the old man, but he never found him. The floor was too open. The pewter soldier had fallen through a crevice, and there he lay as in an open tomb. That day passed, and the little boy went home. And that week passed, and several weeks too. The windows were quite frozen, and the little boy was obliged to sit and breathe on them to get a peephole over to the old house. And there the snow had been blown into all the carved woodwork and inscriptions, and it lay quite up over all of the steps, just as if no one were at home. Nor was there anyone at home, for the old man had died. In the evening there was a hearse seen before the door, and he was borne into it in his coffin. It was now to go out into the country, and he was to lie in his grave. He was driven out there, but no one followed. All his friends were dead, and the little boy kissed his hand to the coffin as it was driven away. Some days afterward there was an auction at the old house, and the little boy saw from the window how they carried the old knights and the old ladies away. The flower pots with the long ears, the old chairs and the old clothes press. Something came here and something went there. The portrait of who had been found at the broker's came to the broker's again, and there it hung, for no one knew her any more, and no one cared about that old picture. In the spring they pulled the house down, for as people said, it was a ruin. One could see from the street right into the room where the hog's leather hanging, which was slashed and torn, and the green grass and leaves about the balcony hung quite wild about the falling beams. And then it was put to rights. "That's a relief," said all the neighboring houses. A fine house was built there, with large windows and smooth white walls. But before it, where the old house had in fact stood, there was a little garden laid out, and a wild grapevine ran up the wall of the neighboring house. Before the garden there was a large iron railing with an iron door. It looked quite splendid, and the people stood still and peeped in. And the sparrows hung by in scores on the vine, and they chatted away at each other as well as they could, but it was not about the old house, for they could not remember it. So many years had passed, so many that the little boy had grown up into a whole man. Yes, a clever man, and a pleasure to his parents. And he had just been married, and together with his little wife had come to live in the house here, where the garden was. And he stood by her while she planted a field flower that she found so pretty. And she planted it with her little hand and pressed the earth around it with her fingers. Oh, what was that? She had stuck herself. There was something pointed sticking straight out of the soft earth. It was, yes, guess. It was the pewter soldier. He that was lost up at the old man's, and had tumbled and turned about amongst the timber and the rubbish, and had at last laid for many years into the ground. The young wife wiped the dirt off the soldier, first with a green leaf, and then with her fine handkerchief, and it had such a delightful smell that it was to the pewter soldier just as if he had awakened from a trance. "Let me see him," said the young man, and he laughed, and he shook his head. "Nay, it cannot be he, but he reminds me of a story about a pewter soldier which I had when I was a little boy." And then he told his good lady wife about the old house and the old man and the pewter soldier that he sent over because the old man was so very, very lonely. And he told it as correctly as it has been, so that the tears came to the eye of his young wife on account of the old house and the old man. It may possibly be, however, that it is the same pewter soldier," said she. "I will take care of it, and I will remember all that you have told me. But you must show me where the old man's grave is." "But I do not know it," said he, "and no one knows it. All his friends were dead, and no one took care of it, and I was then just a little boy." "Oh, how very, very lonely he must have been," said she. "Very, very lonely," said the pewter soldier, "but it is delightful not to be forgotten." "Delightful!" shouted something close by, but no one, except the pewter soldier, saw that it was a piece of the hog's leather hangings. It had lost all its gilding, and it looked like a piece of wet clay, but it had an opinion, and it gave it. The gilding decays, but the hog's leather stays. This the pewter soldier did not believe. The end. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, y'all be sweet.